Hello, guys. It's another fresh and exciting episode on the show. It's a wonderful day today, and you guys know I only bring the top guest to my show. So today's guest is Dr. Vanessa LaBode-Richman. Vanessa, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
All right, thank you so much. I'm happy that you are here as well. So I would like you to introduce yourself to my audience.
Sure. So I'm Dr. Vanessa. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist, which means that I specialize in the relationship between the mind, the brain, and behavior. Um, I have a PhD in clinical psychology, and I have a private practice where I help people navigate the difficult times of their life. I am now pursuing um, more workshops and speaking opportunities to discuss resilience and to help people on a broader scale navigate difficult challenges in life, whether it's loss or stress, burnout, all sorts of things that make life difficult at times. And I'm really excited to talk to you about that today.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Vanessa. So let's get into the questions I have here for you. Okay, so talking about the forward method, what is the forward method and what inspired you to create it?
Sure. So the forward method is a practical framework built off of psychology and cognitive neuroscience. And it's a practical framework that helps people navigate life's difficult moments without losing themselves in it. The forward method is spelled FOURWARD because there are four components to the method, and each letter of four, FOUR, stands for a different component. So before I maybe dive into the method specifically, what inspired me is twofold. I've had the experience throughout my life that when people hear about the things that I've experienced or struggles that I've persevered through, the response I normally get from people is, "Oh my God, I don't know how you did that." Or, "Oh my gosh, I'm not sure I could have done that." And after years and years of getting this response from people, I started thinking about why is it that when I share parts of my life with people, people are responding to me that way instead of something like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That's so hard." People would often tell me that it was hard, but again, the response that kept coming up over and over was, "I don't know how you do it." So I started to maybe be curious about what people were hearing that I wasn't necessarily trying to communicate, but that was resonating with them. So that's part of what the inspiration was, figuring out what people were responding to. And then the other part is as a clinical neuropsychologist, as someone who treats, people with mental health conditions and, experiencing really hard things in life, I I've had the privilege of hearing people's stories and hearing how they're coping with them. And so between my own life, knowing how I've struggled, knowing how I've succeeded, and then also helping so many other people through the difficult times in their life, I started to realize that we're not really taught how to practice resilience in a real way that is sustainable. A lot of the culture is to just keep pushing and to be positive. And yes, there's time and place for that, but I don't know that that's always helpful. And so that's really where the forward method came from. It's been created and organized to be able to be accessible and a tool for people to have and as an anchor when they're going through something difficult. So there are four steps, four components of the forward method. The first component is you're going to frame the problem. That's the F. You're going to frame the problem. And that means that you're going to look at the stressor or the difficult thing that you're up against, and you're going to decide whether you're going to fix it, face it, or forget it. We fix the things that have a solution. We face the things that we can't fix, but we have to tolerate the discomfort for a specific goal. And we forget the things that are unhealthy to accept. So, for example, if I'm having trouble logging into this interview right now, because my internet's not working, that's something I'm going to fix. That has a very easy solve. That has something I can do to fix it. So I would restart my router or I would troubleshoot on my computer, but that is something that I can just fix and move on from. Things I would face are things that are going to be uncomfortable or overwhelming, but I'm going to do it for a goal. So, for example, if I'm in the hospital with a loved one and they're getting results for some tests that were done, that's going to be really anxiety provoking and really overwhelming. But I'm there because the goal is to be an advocate or a support person for that person. So that's something I'm just going to have to face and push through because you can't really fix it. And then the things that we forget are the things that are unhealthy to accept, the things that are going to really make it hard to manage because it's not going to change. So, for example, if you have a job in a very toxic workplace, that might be a job we have to forget because it would not be in your best interest to continue to be somewhere where maybe your time is not valued or you are struggling to, work in a way that is sustainable. So that's the F. The O is for having the outlook that you can overcome anything. This is not about being positive because the reality is some things do work out, but some things don't. But I think the important thing here is to always remind yourself that human beings are built to struggle and to survive. And so if you allow yourself to think, I can get through this, even if it feels impossible, you are going to maximize the options you have to actually get through it. The U for the forward method is understanding. And here we're thinking about understanding outside of ourselves. So we're going to borrow someone else's or something else's perspective. The reason for this is that when our brain is under stress, it gets very focused on our own life and it starts to get run on the part of the brain called the amygdala, which is very fear and threat focused. So when we're experiencing stress, if we're not on purpose activating a different part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in decision making and organization and perspective, we actually will get locked into the part of the brain that is really just afraid. And the reality is we need clarity often to move through really hard things. So the U in the forward method is we are going to work really hard to find outside perspective, either through experts or books or podcasts or, any outside resource, because the reality is you're not the first person to have the problem you have. Not everyone is going to have the exact same problem, but I'm sure that there have been people before you that have experienced something similar that we can pull upon their wisdom to help us have a better sense of how to move forward. And then finally, the last part of the forward method is the R, which is for reflection. This is where we are going to, on purpose, extract the meaning from the really hard experience that we're having. The reason for this is that pain does not automatically become strength. I know we always think about how, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but the reality is sometimes pain is just pain. And so what we can do is figure out what lessons we learned through moving through a really hard time. And that's what gives that pain and that discomfort purpose.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Vanessa. So you often say that resilience isn't about enduring everything. What do you mean by that?
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second. Can you repeat that?
You often say that resilience isn't about enduring everything. What do you mean by that?
Sure. So resilience is our ability to adapt and move through really hard things without losing ourselves in it. Endurance is being able to tolerate something and not moving away from it. Endurance can be a type of resilience. Enduring something can be resilience, but not all endurance is that. And the reason for that is, as earlier when we were talking about the forward method, in that first step, the F, the framing the problem, it would be not a good idea for you to endure things that would be best forgotten. So, for example, if you're in a relationship with someone who is either abusing you or neglecting you or does not value your time, is disrespectful, it's not going to be good for you to endure that. It's actually very unhealthy. And it's going to take parts of you down, and you are not going to feel like the parts of you that are strong and most adaptable. That kind of interaction and that kind of relationship is really, really harmful to our sense of self and our mental health. And so, if we were just to endure having someone treat us that way, that's not resilience. But if we are, like I said earlier, if, there is someone that we love and we are helping them through a crisis and it's really overwhelming, enduring that would be good because that's something that we're choosing to face. And so enduring things that need to be forgotten or released is not endurance. That actually just maintains a really difficult balance for our mind and our brain. And it actually depletes us over time of energy and resources. Something you didn't ask specifically, but part of this, part of the way that I help people understand the forward method is with a something I call brain dollars. And I want you to imagine that everything your brain does, big things, small things, good things, bad things, every single thing your brain does costs it money. And so when we are enduring something, we are spending those brain dollars regularly to be able to tolerate and hold on to something. Well, if we're tolerating and holding on to something that's unhealthy, that's going to just bleed your brain of this money in a way that's not going to be helpful. And what we want to do with resilience is we want to be able to choose very effectively where we are spending those brain dollars so that we can make it through hard times and be better afterward, to be stronger afterward. And that only happens when we are correctly labeling what we're dealing with so that we can cope with it in the right way.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vanessa. So, how can someone recognize when they are using the wrong coping strategy or the wrong problem?
I think oftentimes we will get that information through ways that we're feeling or symptoms that we start to have. So, burnout, for example, the feeling of being regularly exhausted, lack of motivation, disinterest in things, maybe increased irritability. These are the things that are going to hopefully remind us to check in about whether we're handling things in the way that we need to. Um, of course, if someone is learning about the forward method and then they're about to experience a hard thing, then maybe they have this in their mind and they can just ask themselves at the beginning, like, what kind of problem is this? Do I fix, face, or forget? But oftentimes, something I want to be very clear about is that this method is not going to make hard things less hard. Hard things are going to be hard. There is nothing in the world that takes that out. However, there is struggle that hard things cause, but then when we are incorrectly coping with it, it's adding extra struggle and overwhelming feelings on top of what the stressor would have already required. And so if we're finding that, like I said, you're feeling burnout, you're feeling a lot of anxiety, you're feeling a lot of maybe low mood, things are feeling not as good as they used to in a very kind of chronic way, where you're feeling like this more often than not. Again, sometimes stressors are going to do that on their own. But I think if we are actually aware that we're not feeling well, that would be a really good time to check in with yourself and ask, okay, what are the things that I'm up against right now? Am I dealing with them in the best way? And then truly sitting down and maybe almost listing them out and then trying to figure out, okay, how am I dealing with this one? How am I dealing with that one? And then if there's anything that seems like a mismatch, we have to maybe readjust. So for example, if, one of the things, let's say we're dealing with 3 or 4 different hard things, and one of the things is, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed at work. I always feel like I'm behind. And then when we think about, okay, why am I behind? Well, I have 10 emails that I have been avoiding all week that I haven't responded to yet. Well, that's a fix it. right? That's something like, let's sit down, let's find some time, and let's sit down and just write those emails and send them out. Those are things that have easier solutions that if that is now done, we don't have to worry about them. Those brain dollars don't have to go toward holding the fact that you have 10 emails you haven't answered yet. And so that's what I think I would maybe recommend. If you're starting to feel like things are not feeling good, sometimes it's just because of the stressor. But sometimes I would argue that, we can learn that maybe there are certain things we could be handling differently.
All right. So why do so many high achievers experience burnout despite appearing successful?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Why do so many high achievers experience burnout despite appearing successful?
Most people are not thinking about all the things that they're expecting their brain to do. Most of us, myself included, it took me years to really respect that my brain and my mind is going to get tired. Most people that are high achieving and high functioning have generally been able to get through their life pushing their mind and their brain, just pushing constantly. And for the most part, their mind and their brain has been able to keep up. The problem is over time, because those brain dollars start to really get drained quickly, and because maybe we're not always the best at saving or earning more of those brain dollars, um, burnout starts to happen because you start spending more money, more brain money than you're earning. And so burnout is the feeling of basically being in debt, brain dollar debt, where you are asking your brain to do more and more and more, and your brain does not have the resources to continue to basically produce as much or as steadily as it has been because you've depleted it. And so this is why oftentimes people feel this at work after not understanding why they're feeling like this now because it's always been how they've worked. Well, the problem is things that we are holding and pushing through gets more expensive over time. And oftentimes people that are overworking and really not having too much balance in their life, they're actually not earning those brain dollars that they need to spend in other parts of their life. And so it's often the case that for people that are very high functioning, they will completely drain their brain bank. And then when they're out of that money, that's when they realize they have a problem because they haven't really been paying attention to the signs their brain has been giving them prior to being at a deficit. And so, I think the real take home here is nothing your brain does is free. Every single thing from brushing your teeth to making dinner to a high powered meeting to getting married to being a parent, every single thing your brain does, good or bad, costs it money. And if you're not being careful, you will run out of that money. And I think that's what leads to burnout for a lot of people that just have very full, very high functioning, high achievement based jobs and lives.
Okay, so how have your own experience with grief, burnout, and rebuilding influenced your work?
So I think with my own personal experiences, nothing will teach you perspective better than going through something yourself. And grief and burnout, for example, are two very different experiences, but they're similar in that they can really shift who you are when you're experiencing them. And they can be really, really hard to come out from under. And so I unfortunately have experienced a lot of loss in my life. I lost both of my parents by the time I was 25. And I'm the eldest of all my siblings. And so there was a huge shift after my mom passed away to both continue achieving and creating my own life, but also to become a new kind of person in my family structure and also to process, this inordinate grief. As my mom was the second parent I had lost in only a few years. And I think what it's taught me is that, and I know this also because of, the privilege of being able to work with people in, my practice. Um, People can really survive very, very difficult things. And I think I think many of us, when we are overwhelmed, can forget that. And I think that's where a lot of my work centers, in helping people not only trust that things can be better, but also to find relief in that they are probably stronger than they can imagine. And so these moments where I've experienced intense burnout, or these moments where I've, suffered great loss, it's also taught me that time is so valuable. And so one of the things that I regularly do for myself, because it's one of the lessons, the R in the forward method, it's one of the lessons I've extracted from these really hard experiences, is that I'm going to do what I can to be as fulfilled and happy in my life as I can. And because of that lesson, I'm now, talking to others about the forward method. And, I am trying to cultivate a life that makes me feel very grateful and very fulfilled on a very regular basis. And that's what I'm hoping it does for other people as well.
All right. So here is my final question for you. If listeners remember one message from today's conversation, what would you want it to be?
I think I think one of the most important things we've talked about today, is, what I maybe just reiterated, the idea that human beings are meant to survive struggle. We are built to be able to do that. Our brains, our minds, our bodies, we are truly modeled and conditioned in such a way where hard things are inevitable, but we have been given a lot of the software we need to make it through. I think, like I said earlier, hard things are going to be hard. There's nothing that's going to change that. But I think having the belief that you can get through something and that you will overcome it, and that there's a way to do it without losing yourself and actually being a stronger version of you afterward, I think that's probably the most important take home that your listeners could get from this conversation.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Vanessa. Today's conversation reminds us that resilience isn't about carrying everybody alone. It's about knowing how to respond wisely to life's challenges. Dr. Vanessa has shown us that by protecting our brain dollars and using the right tools at the right time, we can move through difficult seasons without losing ourselves along. All right, so how can my audience connect with you and learn more about what you do?
I'm sorry, you cut out in the middle there. Are you asking for where people can find my resources?
Yes.
Okay, so my website is www.drvanessaonline.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Dr. Vanessa Online, and there are generally weekly posts made there that discuss the forward method.
All right. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Vanessa. Thank you for coming to my show and for sharing your perspective and insights with my audience.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.